Welcome. We're diving deep into the future of talent today.
Hmm.
Celebrity influence, how we relate to those public figures in this always-on world. And we've got a report from scenarioDNA to help us break it all down. It's called The Future of Talent.
Yeah, and it's really fascinating. They're looking at how our idea of talent itself is changing. And it's happening right now, right in front of us. And I really like that they're using cultural foresight to do it. So it's not about crystal ball predictions, but about spotting those trends as they emerge.
I like that. No pressure to predict the future then.
Much easier on us, right?
Seriously. But their approach really resonated with me. They're looking at talent through this lens of a story system. It's like we're all part of this big narrative. It's kind of mind-blowing when you really think about it. So what does that even mean in this context?
Well, it means understanding that how we relate to public figures, it's built on stories. These figures become characters in the narratives that we're all engaging with, that we're following, and that we often project our own values onto. But like any good story, right, those characters, the conflicts, and even the audience's expectations, they're constantly evolving. And that evolution is what this report really untacks.
I'm intrigued. So where do we even begin to untangle all of this? They also mentioned using this thing called the Johari window to analyze this. It sounds a bit technical, but I'm guessing it's relevant here.
Absolutely. Think of the Johari window as a tool, right? It helps us understand that interplay between self-awareness and how the public perceives someone. So there's what we know about ourselves and what we choose to reveal to the world. That's what they call the arena, that shared space of understanding between, say, a celebrity and their fans. And then there's the blind spot things about ourselves that others might pick up on, but we're totally oblivious to. And this model, this framework, it suggests that for a public figure to really resonate today, that arena, it needs to be authentic, relatable, multifaceted. The days of just projecting this perfectly curated persona, those days are fading.
It's like that saying, people can spot a fake a mile away.
Right, so exactly.
So if we're all craving authenticity, what's that even look like in this new landscape of talent? The report points to 10 distinct trends, and the first one that jumped out at me was this: a shift to relatable public figures. And I mean, who doesn't love a down-to-earth celebrity, honestly?
Right. It's a huge shift. The report actually highlights Patrick Dempsey, who's been super candid lately about embracing this stage of his career, you know? And he seems to get it, that audiences connect with that authenticity, even vulnerability. It's a far cry from how things used to be when celebrities felt this pressure to maintain this image of untouchable perfection.
And speaking of keeping it real, they also mentioned Post Malone, who's, about as raw and unfiltered as it gets. But that honesty, even when it's, peppered with a few choice words, it resonates with audiences who are tired of those airbrush personas.
It really speaks to that deep desire for genuine connection, right? That people relate to vulnerability, to this idea that even these wildly successful artists are still human. They have flaws, they have insecurities, just like the rest of us.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder, does this shift towards relatability? Does it change how we see artistry itself? Is there some kind of trade-off between being relatable and maintaining that aura of creative genius?
Those are great questions. And this whole exploration of honesty and, I guess, anxieties leads perfectly into the next trend. The talent machine reflects our anxiety.
Yeah.
It's like celebrities are being more vocal about the pressures that come with fame.
Totally. The report talks about how public figures are really acknowledging the mental toll of that constant scrutiny, that fear of online backlash, and the pressure to maintain a certain image. Timothy Chalamet even made that little joke recently about the actor's strike ending so he could finally promote his movie, right?
Right.
And it was a lighthearted comment, sure, but it highlights that weird, often uncomfortable position that actors find themselves in these days.
Yeah, it's like they're stuck between the art that they want to create and the demands of this industry that's obsessed with image and promotion.
Yeah.
And it's not just actors either, right?
Yeah.
The report also mentions Machine Gun Kelly, who's been really open about his struggles with anxiety. A decade ago, you'd rarely hear a major music figure speak so candidly about their mental health.
It's true. And it really points to this huge shift in how we view vulnerability, not just in celebrities, but in society as a whole. This willingness to be open about struggles that honestly used to be taboo. It seems to really resonate with fans who are dealing with their own anxieties, their own struggles. And, that openness, it feels especially relevant as artists grapple with this, responsibility to use their platform to speak out, right?
Which leads us to the next trend. There is a compulsion to reflect the times.
It's like they're feeling this pressure to be more than just entertainers.
Exactly. The report talks about this growing sense of responsibility among artists to engage with these really important social and political issues. Elliot Page, her example. They're really drawn to projects that tackle these challenging themes,
Mhm.
often reflecting their own personal experiences, advocating for greater understanding.
Yeah. And it's not just in their creative work either. The report also mentioned Mark Ruffalo and his activism, specifically his work on climate change. Oh, absolutely. He's a prime example of a celebrity using that massive platform to bring attention to a cause, even if it means calling out, powerful figures,
Right.
which highlights how these public figures can shape the conversation, really push for change in a way that goes beyond just traditional entertainment.
Right, and technology plays a huge role in all of this. It's not just about spreading awareness, but about how technology shapes our whole perception of these figures, the narratives that surround them. Which brings us to technology builds collective memory.
Totally. Social media, especially, it's become this incredibly powerful force, amplifying voices, shaping how we view these figures, and it all happens in real time. It's a double-edged sword, though, for sure.
For sure. The report gave the example of Cardi B, talking about cancel culture. And it just shows how aware they are of how quickly things can shift online, the pressures that come with that constant scrutiny.
Yeah, and then you have Jeremy Strong talking about how fans are interpreting his Succession character. And it just goes to show how deeply invested people are, how much they're engaging, not just passively consuming, but actively analyzing, interpreting, even shaping the narrative.
Which is kind of wild, to be honest, and maybe a little intimidating. But it speaks to this need for connection, this desire to see ourselves reflected in these figures, even if they are fictional,
Yes.
right? And that kind of ties into the next trend. Fans demand honesty over social mobility. It's not enough to just be successful anymore. You have to be relatable.
It's about authenticity.
Yeah.
People crave realness, flaws, and all. The report uses Steph Curry as an example, how open he is about his failures, how they're all part of the journey. He
Right.
doesn't shy away from vulnerability, and I think that resonates with a lot of people.
Yeah, it's refreshing. And it's not just athletes either. Rihanna, who's known for being incredibly private, has been surprisingly candid about motherhood, the realities of it,
Yeah,
and those glimpses into their lives, struggles and all. It creates a different kind of connection.
for sure. It makes you wonder, is this a reaction to how curated everything is online?
Yeah.
How inauthentic it can feel? Are we craving that realness because it feels increasingly rare?
It's a great question.
Eh.
And it leads us to what the report calls a shift from consumered to inspired. It's like we're moving away from this purely transactional relationship with celebrities towards something more meaningful.
Exactly. It's not just about buying what they're selling, but finding inspiration in their values, their journeys, their willingness to be open.
Emma Watson's a great example. She's talked about how she chooses projects that align with her values, even if it means stepping away from the spotlight.
Right.
And she's not afraid to use her platform to advocate for causes she believes in.
And it resonates.
It does. And then you have Ada Osman, who left a career in law to pursue comedy.
Wow.
That's a powerful statement about following your passion, even if it means going against the grain. It's inspiring, honestly. And speaking of forging their own paths, the next trend is artists are seizing their day. We're seeing more and more artists taking control of their careers, connecting directly with their fans, bypassing those traditional gatekeepers.
It's the rise of the independent artist, right? Caroline Polachek, for instance. She's talked about how she feels more connected to her fans now that she's operating outside that traditional music industry system.
Right. And the report also mentioned Tejanics and how vocal they've been about staying independent. It's about artists defining success on their own terms, both creatively and financially.
Yeah, it's a really empowering message.
It is.
And I think it reflects this broader shift in how we consume, how we engage with art. There's this desire for authenticity, a rejection of those old power structures.
Totally. But of course, this new landscape has its own challenges, right? And nowhere is that more apparent than in this next trend. Deepfakes complicate expectations.
Yeah, it's a bit unnerving when you really think about it. The line between what's real and what's fabricated, it's getting blurrier and blurrier. The report mentioned Idris Elba's reaction to that deepfake of him. He found it creepy.
Understandably.
Yeah.
It really makes you think about consent, about control over your own image. The very nature of authenticity in this digital age is being challenged.
It is.
And Tom Hanks actually had a similar experience with a deep fake being used in an ad, and he had no idea, didn't give permission.
Wow.
Yeah.
It highlights the potential dangers of all this technology, from misinformation to, Serious reputational damage.
It's a lot to deal with.
A lot to unpack there.
And as if deepfakes weren't enough to wrap our heads around, the final trend takes us even further down the rabbit hole. Virtual influencers offer controlled entertainment.
It's like the rise of the virtual beings, right? We've got Lil Miquela, AI-generated music. They're really blurring the lines between real and, well, unreal.
It's wild. The report actually quoted Jenny Deering from 1337. It's a company that creates these AI-driven micro-influencers.
Interesting.
Yeah. And she talked about these virtual beings, how they can facilitate connection, which is a bold claim.
It is. It's a lot to process. It makes you wonder, are we getting to a point where the line between human and artificial, is it even relevant anymore? At least when it comes to entertainment, to influence.
Right. It really makes you question, what does it even mean to be a fan at this point? What are we really looking for from these figures, real or virtual?
It's almost like we're in uncharted territory here, right? Trying to figure out this whole thing with fame and influence, how it all works now.
Yeah, it's a new frontier for those parasocial relationships, that's for sure. And it's all driven by technology, by this blurring of what's real. And the stakes are high. It's not just about entertainment anymore, right? It's about influence, values, how we even see ourselves in this increasingly digital world. It's a lot, honestly. But taking a step back, looking at all these trends together, is there a common thread here? A key takeaway we can grasp from all of this?
I think if we had to boil it down, it's authenticity. In a world that's just saturated with information, with these carefully constructed personas, with technology that's getting more sophisticated every day, it seems like that genuine connection, that realness, it still matters a lot.
Yeah.
Whether it's a celebrity being open about their struggles, an artist taking control of their own narrative, that authenticity, it resonates.
It's like they say, right? Be yourself, everyone else is taken.
Mm.
But in this case, it's like being yourself might be the key to navigating this whole new world of talent and influence.
And it's not just a lesson for celebrities, right? This whole focus on authenticity, it applies to everyone. Makes you think, how do these trends affect how we behave, how we relate to each other, even our own desire for connection?
That is a really interesting question because it's easy to get caught up in the world of celebrity, but these trends, they really are a reflection of bigger changes happening in society as a whole.
Absolutely. And it goes beyond just being relatable. It's about being smart about the information we consume, understanding how these power dynamics work, demanding transparency and accountability from the figures that influence us, whether they're flesh and blood or just pixels on a screen.
It's about looking past those carefully constructed narratives and realizing that even the most influential figures, they're human. They have their own complexities, their own contradictions.
Their own stories, just like us. Stories that are always evolving.
That is a thought-provoking note to end on. If you're as fascinated by these trends as we are, check out scenarioDNA's work over at scenarioDNA.com. They've got some really insightful reports on how culture is changing.
Definitely gave us a lot to think about.
It sure did. That's it for this deep dive into the future of talent. Until next time, stay curious, keep asking those questions, and maybe, just maybe, think twice the next time you're about to hit that follow button.